told her, you know what, I have type 1 and my blood sugars are better now than they've ever been before. And I eat more carbohydrates than I ever have in my life. Yeah. So they're, kind of a thing. And she goes, oh, well, I know why. It's the fiber.
Hey, friends and listeners of the Switch for Good podcast. Yep, that's you. I have some really exciting news. Dotsie and I have started a Switch for Good podcast Facebook group. We created it so we can build a community of fans that will help us improve the show and deliver on the topics that you want to learn more about. So we want to hear what your favorite content is, what you want more of, and what you want less of. And if you like the length of the show, Dotsie and I are always talking about the length of the show, right, Dotsie?
Yes.
We want to tailor our show around the needs and desires of our incredible listeners, almost 500,000 of you. And it's really simple to join. Just go to our Switch for Good Facebook page. That's Switch, the number 4, and then Good. And then click on groups. And there we are, the Switch for Good podcast chat. You can post directly in the group, share ideas, talk to other listeners, and connect with like-minded folks. So go, run, join our Facebook group and tell us what you want.
Now, who says you have to be defined by type 1 diabetes diagnosis? Who says your life can't continue to be just as rich or fulfilling? Well, certainly not today's guest. Lauren Plunkett is a registered dietitian, a diabetes education specialist, a fitness instructor, a dynamic national speaker, plant-based nutrition advocate, and a shining beacon of positive energy, exemplifying how to live your best life with type 1 diabetes. And she does it all with a keen intellect and a smile so radiant, I swear you could see it from 10 miles away. Lauren is also the author of one of my new favorite books. I'm going to show it here, Type 1 Determination, which I love because it's from the perspective of someone who's both a patient and an expert, offering applicable strategies to anyone suffering from type 1 diabetes. Some of our listeners might even recognize her name for her contribution to our very own Switch for Good blog. I first got to meet Lauren in Minneapolis in late 2018 when Switch for Good was just getting underway, and we both spoke at an intimate fundraising event. I really was in awe of her feistiness, her smarts, and just her verve. And y'all are going to know what I'm talking about when you get to meet her. She's certainly someone who can teach us all a thing or two about living our very best lives.
Thank you. I feel like I have a little tear here because I'm so sensitive. It seems like anymore now that I'm a writer and everything else, the empathy just is sort of oozing out of my pores. But thank you for that. That is so kind to hear that come from you and Alexandra, and just I'm so excited to be here and talking with you too.
Oh, we're going to have fun, and I know our listeners are going to learn a lot, whether they have type 1 diabetes, know someone, or none of the above, because you have so much to share, just generally speaking, about food and nutrition and just living our best lives. And so stay tuned, y'all, because you don't just have to have type 1 to get a lot from Lauren. So your book, and it has the golden seal of the Benjamin Franklin Award too. So congrats on that. And I mentioned it's type 1 determination, but I love that this, I guess, sort of a subtitle, Transforming Type 1 Diabetes Through Personal Experience, Scientific Evidence, and a Dash of Disobedience. I would love to start from the beginning. We don't always start from the beginning, but the beginning of your book just is harrowing. I just had chills up and down my spine in that first chapter, waiting to see what was going to happen and how it was going to unfold. And that first chapter is called Cola and Candy Bars. And you had gotten to a point as a kid where you were guzzling soda with the side of candy bars and losing weight at the same time. You also were drinking, barely drinking any water, but you had to pee constantly. And your sunken eyes were basically clear signs of a metabolic meltdown, you say. I want to know what it felt like going through this time, because you're just 11 and before 11, obviously. And so you're so young. And I'd love for you to tell our listeners kind of what you found out at that first doctor's appointment that you went to with your parents that would change the trajectory of your entire life.
Great question. You take great notes, Dotsie. Yeah, I think for anybody that's ever been diagnosed with anything, it's oh, great, what now? And even though I was 11 years old, there was, you're going to grow up now. There was, you have big responsibilities. There's stuff to do to keep yourself alive now. This is going to be a lesson in how not to die. That's what's coming. So that was really the realization, but it was, okay, what do we need to know to keep me alive? That was it. It was crystal clear as to here's where we're going to go next. So it could be this dramatic display, but actually I think it's just something that my parents had within them is we got to keep our kid alive. What do we need to know? Let's get this done and let's go home.
Back then, what did they tell you to do to keep yourself alive? And how did it work?
Yeah, you say back then, like it's changed much. And I'm afraid I can't speak for every clinic in the world, but there are a lot of things that have not changed that probably should. I was go to the hospital, you're being admitted, you're going to get fluids, you're in diabetic ketoacidosis, which is this metabolic meltdown that is what can kill someone. So that's what I had to come back from, was this condition in my body where I wasn't able to hold nutrition. And that is the diagnosis of type 1 diabetes. Some people with type 2 will experience some of these things too before they get diagnosed, is that element of really, really high blood sugar. And what happens there and what you can feel is you get used to feeling bad. I think a lot of Americans are in that situation. They don't know what it's like to feel healthy, and they get used to feeling a certain specific way that they do. Dairy, I think dairy is one of the finest examples of how fast someone can go from feeling what they do on a daily basis to maybe I should knock off one of the inflammatory foods, one of the big allergens. And when they cut back on milk, it takes a couple of days to say, I feel way better. In fact, I recently had an email from someone that experienced this who has type 1 diabetes and said, I need to buy your book right now. My blood sugars are so much better after just a couple of days of knocking off the dairy. And I was like, whoa. So anyway, I'm in metabolic meltdown. And the conversation overnight is, as a little kid, now I'm learning what carbohydrates are. I'm learning how to count them. I'm learning what grams are. I'm learning that food means more than nourishment. It means labels. It means counting. It means very carefully measuring, control. Food and control come together. So food is both the problem and the solution in diabetes. And when you are an 11-year-old little girl approaching the hormonal apocalypse, this is what then leads to a very disordered relationship with food versus eating disorder relationship with food. And that's essentially what I was taught. I was taught how to have a difficult relationship with food, yet that is the method of teaching in order to keep yourself alive so that you could take insulin. So there's an interesting twist. And this is something I realized as I was getting older and started working in a diabetes clinic and seeing how the teaching was really this standard. But why aren't we walking in there and asking these kids after they've had diabetes for a while, how do you feel about food? What's your relationship with food like? Are you having a tough time? I had a horribly tough time, but it took growing up and looking back to do something about it, to recognize that's what happened to me as I was trying to be healthy. Things went completely the wrong way.
Tell everyone what changed, because in the book, as I've already mentioned, you went from a state of eating a lot of candy bars and sugar and Coca-Cola and were losing weight. So, and I remember reading, you're kind of like, cool. That's easy. I'm not, as you're starting, as you're kind of prepubescent. Tell everyone then what changed, right? So you get admitted to the hospital, you get this diagnosis, and then what are the actual mechanics that happen inside your body to get it back on a path that was healthy, and then the kind of the disordered eating thoughts start to creep in,
for
because
sure.
you're not eating candy bars and cola anymore.
Right, that was going to stop. So yeah, we'll throw a little bit of science into this. So in type 1 diabetes, what's happening here is my body is no longer making insulin. It's no longer making the cells that make insulin. So we'll kind of jump ahead in a few scientific reactions here, just to say insulin is a hormone. It's incredibly important. It isn't the bad guy. It's what every single body needs to survive. It's a hormone, it's anabolic, it's a big deal. I wasn't making it. So,
And the pancreas makes it, right?
yes, and the pancreas makes it. So I think of insulin a bit like an Uber. It helps to move glucose molecules from the bloodstream to the cell, where a single molecule goes into that mitochondria and boom, we have energy, which just goes to say how glucose is our number one source of fuel. So I wasn't using it properly. All of that glucose was accumulating in the bloodstream. My blood sugar is going sky high. So I feel like crap. There's just too much of a buildup there. In the meantime, my cells aren't making that energy. I'm not actually using my food. So it's interesting how I'm eating, but I'm not using that food. It's just moving straight through me because I don't have my Ubers. I don't have that movement. I don't have that insulin to do its job. So as soon as I was insulin's being injected, I'm starting to absorb this exogenous insulin. So injected insulin's coming into my system, my cells knew what to do with that, and boom, I'm coming back to life. Then the weight gain happens because I went from not being able to hold any of this nutrition, just blowing straight out of my body, to now it's time to grow. It's time to go through some of these hormonal changes. And I'm not ever going to do anything dangerous with insulin. I'm never going to stop taking it. I'm not going to turn against myself. I was never mad at the diabetes. I was upset. I didn't understand how to make this easier. And so food became my best friend and my enemy. Like I said, it was the problem and it was the solution. And what is so interesting about the evolution of this, I think that people can maybe resonate with, or people like me who were really angry that might not be anywhere interested in reading my book are the ones that probably need to hear this the most, is that blood sugar affects your mood so much. Diabetes is not one thing that needs to be controlled by cutting carbohydrates. Blood sugar affects the whole system, like the whole system affects diabetes, because it's a big, important deal to be able to use our glucose. It is that important.
That's where hangry comes from, right? Low blood sugar.
Yeah, exactly. Like low blood sugar. And so high blood sugars and this really drastic fluctuation happening was causing my mood to change a lot, even though I was trying to do what I was being trained to do. I'm trying to be this good little girl with diabetes by going through the motions, but the type of food I was eating was not helping my whole system. Even if my blood sugars were the goal to control, which actually wasn't helping either, because the fluctuations that I was having was messing with my appetite so much. And those highs were causing me to feel then like foggy and frustrated and angry. And so then you would treat the high with insulin. Now, if you overtreat, your blood sugars come diving down, which sends your appetite sky high. It's kind of a defense mechanism, but you're also seeing that your blood sugar is going low. Now you eat. So you see how this relationship can evolve. Insulin is the solution for high blood sugar, but carbohydrates are going to help me from going low. So is insulin the bad guy, or are carbohydrates the bad guy? Maybe both of them are.
You write in your book that 30% of diabetic women restrict insulin because they're afraid it will make them gain weight. Now, it sounds like you didn't, but can you explain, you explain in the book why it actually, insulin is one of the reasons that we store fat. Is that correct? Or it causes us to be hungry, causes the release of ghrelin. Tell us what about the insulin that makes us gain weight, because it's not just that you were starting to absorb your nutrients or that you were hitting puberty. It was also insulin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what's important to actually distinguish here is that insulin doesn't cause weight gain, but it will help us to keep nutrients on board. Yes. So certainly it all comes down to calories. Now, people with diabetes, I always remind, when I speak, I say people with diabetes are not different from the rest of the population. We still need to know what type of nutrition is right for us. Mm-hmm. We still need to know how many carbohydrates, protein, fat we need as individuals. Whether we have type 1 and we're athletes or we're not athletes, we still have individual needs. So you can't tell us to just eat a certain amount of carbohydrates every meal as if that works for someone like me or someone who's a foot taller than me. If we overeat, we're going to need more insulin. And that's where insulin gets mixed up in this insulin thing that causes weight gain. Insulin is anabolic in that it helps our bodies grow. So you can imagine, like as a kid, right, when you're trying to grow a little bit more or you're extra active, and kids have the highest calorie needs, where there can be this mix up between, well, I need more insulin as I'm getting older. So is the insulin causing me to gain weight? And that's where the confusion comes in, where insulin takes a lot of the blame, where body fat comes into play. And what I needed to learn is that, no, I'm overeating to treat low blood sugars. And then because I'm overeating, my blood sugars are going too high. And now I have to take more insulin to correct that.
But in the book, you say that insulin causes the release of ghrelin, which makes us hungry.
So if what happens here is it's kind of a mechanism for every body, is that when our hunger hormones are starting to increase, insulin would be released for someone that does make insulin. But in my case, I'm going to need to take insulin in order to work with those carbohydrates to absorb them.
Okay. I see.
It's all
I've
in
heard a
the
lot of
absorbs.
nutritionists say you need to keep your blood sugar. This is not for diabetic per se, but if you keep your blood sugar steady, you will be less apt to store fat.
Yeah. And insulin isn't the thing that makes us store fat. Insulin helps glucose move in to unlocking this key to get those molecules in the cell. So yeah, metabolically, I don't know how insulin somehow becomes this thing that makes fat, doesn't make fat. Nutrition, it's going to be fat as storage. It's kind of like calories and grams aren't the same thing. So calories are the unit of energy, right? Where grams are going to be a little something different. So calories, that unit of energy, we are going to end up storing more of that as triglycerides if we overeat. So insulin we're going to have more Ubers. We're going to fire up more insulin molecules to move the glucose. So that I think is where maybe there's some sort of mechanism there where it's easy to confuse that. From my knowledge of type 1 diabetes is it's always a much more positive place to stand to say insulin is not the thing that's causing you to gain weight. Overeating is causing you to take more insulin. However, it's the calorie load, just like every normal person, it's the calorie load.
So I've always understood keeping the blood sugar and the kind of the glucose more steady, I guess is a vehicle to keep this is how I eat and live, steady as in terms of when I'm going to feed and when I'm not. And so I do well with eating when I'm hungry, but not till I'm full, which then has me eating 4 or 5 times a day. And it works well for me. So that's why I've always not quite understood intermittent fasting, but Alexandra is doing that and she doesn't eat until noon. So I would love to understand that better, why that does work as well for some people. And you have said, Alexandra, a few times on the show that you're really not that hungry actually till noon. Like it's not that hard or not that bad. And you did it for a different reason, right? You did it as a vehicle to lower your cholesterol.
Right. Exactly. I'm curious too, because Lauren, how somebody with diabetes or maybe not, is the best way to keep your blood sugar stable? Because I think we all agree that a stable blood sugar is a good thing, right?
Yeah, that we feel better when we call it in range, time in range when it comes to diabetes. The more time you spend in range, the better you feel.
And what are the numbers that are in range, just so we know?
Well, 80 to 180 for type 1 diabetes. Some people might decide they want to be a little bit closer to like 150 and lower, but that 7.0 A1C is the goal for people to get to 7.0. If you have type 1 diabetes, that's what we're hoping. I love the saying strive for 6.5. I think that's a fantastic way to look at it. There is a little segue here. There are some things going on in the world of type 1 that I think are a little bit scary. And it's this how low can you go idea. Holding on to blood sugars that are in the range of someone that's even below pre-diabetes, meaning you're below 5.6%. I'm not a fan of this. I'm not a fan of people posting A1Cs on social media and this how low can you go thing, because I was a kid at 14 one time that hated my body and never hit those goals. If I was a 14-year-old girl right now seeing this stuff, I can't imagine what that would do to me if my A1C wasn't at goal and I was getting crap from the doctor and my parents and getting harped on by everybody. That's what I think responsibly people need to look at when they're so excited about how low can you go. Well, that 7%, we don't see any studies saying complications happen below 7%, but above 7%, we got to try to get down to that 7. So we don't see studies right now saying that anything lower than 7% is going to prevent complications. But somewhere we're getting this idea that we will get complications if we have any type of a high blood sugar. And that's where all of this worry and massive paranoia comes in about blood sugar. For type 2 diabetes, at 6.5 is when type 2 gets diagnosed. So anywhere we can get lower to 6, 5.6, 7, 8% is that pre-diabetes category, 5.9. So really it's pre-diabetes up until it hits 6.5. But the way I always look at pre-diabetes is let's reverse this insulin resistance. Let's get on the nutrition right now. Let's not get you any closer to that 6.5. And that focus on insulin resistance works for both type 1 and type 2 diabetes. So yeah, going back to stable blood sugar, absolutely. Now there are some studies on intermittent fasting to show that it can be helpful for type 1 diabetes. Specifically, what I've looked at is what happens if you get up in the morning and you exercise fasted when you have type 1. And there's a little bit of research there to show the benefit. What I think is interesting is just the circadian rhythm, nature's fast is sleeping. So when I hear that people aren't sleeping, I'm like, can we just try to sleep? Can we do the sleep thing first before we try to, hack something with nutrition when you're already behind the buck because you don't sleep?
Yeah.
And let's work our way backwards. So for sleeping, we get up in the morning. Nature says blood sugar needs to rise when we get up with the sunrise, but a lot of us just basically get out of bed and go to our desk. So it's not really working out in our favor as much anymore. So I think it's an interesting thing to experiment with, to see how are you waking up in the morning? Because I know for a fact that I rise in the morning. So I will push my nutrition back a little bit until I see that my blood sugars have stabilized and I'm in range and I'm in a good spot to begin fueling myself. So that's how I play it. For people that aren't tracking their blood sugar, an interesting thing to look at is just how you feel. Whatever the first meal of the day is, whenever you feel like eating, that's breakfast. The first meal is the first meal. So I really like to remove labels around a lot of these things. You have to eat breakfast in the morning. Well, what time do you get up? What time do you do your job? Like people that work overnight shifts, I'm not going to use the word breakfast. I'm going to use first meal. First meal of the day. Let's get rid of these labels. Let's figure out how to nourish you, whether you have diabetes or not. And then we can get, you can go a little bit deeper into that specific person. So that's how I look at someone, diabetes or not. We get specific with you, your schedule, what works for you, and find out how can we get the best outcomes. So whether you eat at noon or 6 a.m., if it works, it works.
Yeah. Are you a proponent of the continuous glucose monitor for someone who doesn't have diabetes, who wants to keep their blood sugar steady and see what foods raise their blood sugar too much, and et cetera, et cetera?
It's controversial.
Wearables.
Well, I shouldn't say controversial. I'm wearing
this, by the way, is something that monitors your blood sugar.
Yes, a continuous glucose monitor. I have one on my stomach right now. I waited my whole life for one of these. I love it. They are way too expensive, way too hard to get. And that's the first problem in the diabetes community, is that we have this amazing technology. Why doesn't every person have it in every single country? This would completely change lives. And I see this happening incredibly with type 2 diabetes. A CGM plus plant-based nutrition is hands down the best way to treat diabetes. And I will scream that at the top of my lungs everywhere, because I've done this with people. And what I love to see the most for them is what they learn about their body. So for someone that doesn't have diabetes, if diabetes is in your family, if you want to be a better athlete, if you have some metabolic issues, even food allergies, you have digestive issues, something that can even be affecting you neurologically, athletes go through a lot of digestive adventure, particularly endurance athletes. You guys that love to suffer.
That's a nice way to say it, adventure. I like that.
Right? Like digestive adventures. And then wondering what the hell, and it can be it can be a damage, or it can be an ending situation, and imagine even like getting nervous before a race, or just for your average person that developed an allergy later in life. CGMs are amazing. They give us so much personal knowledge that they should be falling from the trees. It's just, from what I teach people, it's just, I want to put one on my husband now. Dotsie, if you remember, you met him, cyclist, he's all of a sudden running a 6-minute mile. Like this guy, I just can't believe it. And so he's been my human experiment for a very long time. Like I'm experimenting with myself to see how I react as somebody with type 1. But then I will also, I've studied him for a long time. I'm like, okay, we need more nutrition. We need to get, more calories in you, whatever, you have 3,000 calories a day, where you at, like all of this between his elitism. And then there's me just sort of hanging on and trying to see how I do. So if anybody is interested in a continuous glucose monitor and they can get one, they absolutely should. It's a stage of readiness. If people without diabetes can get one, please do. If you can't, we need to do something for you.
Yeah. It's really fascinating for this really active people listening, or the athletes leading into London. One of my teammates that ended up competing with in London on my team in the team pursuit, she had been a sprinter, right? So track and velodrome cycling is very similar to running track. So she was a sprinter, let's say like the 100-meter, and she moved over, transformed her entire body over to the endurance side and did team pursuit with us. She's a legend. But when we first started training together, and she was still doing some sprint training pre-Beijing Olympics. So she went to the Olympics in Beijing in sprint. And in sprint on the track on the velodrome, they go many, many, many rounds until the finals. So they start in the morning and the finals are at night. So they're literally on about a 10, 12 hour, they're just at the track, compete, having to like be super on, get on the track, compete, come down. Compete, come down. I mean, it's crazy how long it lasts. And she was really having trouble keeping her blood sugar up at the right time, because you can't just go 10 hours up, right? So she was using just direct to blood sugar in the form of goos, right? Like the liquid sugar. So we didn't really know nearly as much back then. And so she was crashing at the wrong times, right? She had to maybe go back out to a semifinal round and she's kind of on a crash from the goo, but she needed it to get so one of my friends who is a PhD in nutrition and exercise science said, try the glucose tablets that are like at CVS, like that, and I don't know if they still have so much less glucose and less of an intense direct hit. And we realized too, we were doing the goos. She was doing the goos with caffeine. So it was like, so she tried those. And we also put in, I was just starting to traverse plants, not completely, but I knew that I did really well on potatoes and they helped. So it was like the glucose tablet with just raw, cooked potatoes, but cold, and we keep, and it was just fascinating to see the change, because she, about midway through that journey, got a continuous glucose monitor. They got it stapled in her stomach. And back then it was like, no one has one of these. And this is like super high tech. And the guy came over to her house and, shot it in her stomach. But that was really a complete game changer for her to then be able to watch it and see what was happening. And I don't think too many people think about that in terms of activity level, and especially like extreme athletes like your husband. We used to just think about it for someone with diabetes. But it really allowed her to be able to do what she did in London.
I would have had so much
knowledge
fun
base.
looking at that. Yeah. Is that what she would have seen, are these spikes going up, and that type of sport is hard because there's so much adrenaline going on. That adrenaline factor too is going to mess with her. So there are a couple of things to factor into all of that, is that slow absorbing carbohydrate, like you mentioned, like potato or even a banana, doesn't act quite as fast as what you're going to get from a goo or fruit juice, depending on the type of sugar that's going to work for your stomach. So the glucose tabs, in smaller increments, but then to look at her and to base the timing on, do you need 30 grams on the hour? Do you need 30 grams in between? How are you, how are we cycling this? And that's that's how we would have been looking at it for her, is how can we be consistent as possible? Like, you can't recommend the same thing to every athlete. You might start at some baseline and go from there. But you can, and one comparison I've always made is, I think that people with diabetes are absolutely set up to be athletes. Absolutely set up for it. The stuff
like
sort of accidentally, right? To deal with my anger, I become a spin instructor. But anger for like everything I wish I had learned earlier. It took 17 years for me to find out the power of fiber. Like, why did that happen to me? But athletes on this individual level, they want to know so much about their bodies, about their glucose, about their nutrition. People with type 1, to survive and to survive well, That's what we have to know. So embrace it, because the minute that you do is the minute you change your life. So the same thing for people who don't have diabetes. If they want to get their hands on a CGM and track their glucose, we could be looking at an athlete. We could be looking at someone pre-diabetes. This is how similar we are in this pool. Over 500 million people on the planet have diabetes. How many elite athletes are there? We can learn so much from each other. And when I started diving into sports nutrition, that's what helped me understand more about my body, when there was hardly any research out there specifically about people with type 1. That was actually where I started to understand metabolism better and timing, so I could get better and on the bike that doesn't move. But that's where I felt safest in understanding what can I do in 30 minutes, which now I understand what I can do in 90 minutes while leading a class full of people and going just as hard as they are. So that's the amazing thing here that we have in this like full cycle learning process about metabolism, CGMs, and blood sugar.
Tell us why that's so, sorry, Alexandra, I'm dying to go into the food, but I want to understand why exercise is such an important component physiologically for somebody with type 1 or type 2, if it is the same.
No,
as important.
In simple terms, our bodies love to move. Our heart loves to work. Our muscles, look at how we're built, for crying out loud. The body wants some kind of activity. And just like the idea with the insulin moving the glucose molecules, is this movement and the uptake of glucose accelerates in aerobic activity. And in anaerobic activity, it has a little bit of a different mechanism. But if we can use them both within a workout, like within an hour, if we're doing a little bit of aerobic activity mixed with anaerobic activity, we end up having more stable blood sugars. So if you're aerobic for a longer duration, your blood sugars are going to be stable, but they're going to start to slightly go down. That's why when you get to that 60, 75, 90-minute mark, you've got to fuel, right? So that's somebody without diabetes. But the same exact thing can happen with someone who has diabetes too, is to understand, when do you need fuel? Because your blood sugars are naturally starting to come down, and that just comes down to timing. That's how effective exercise is. So that can stick with us for 12 plus hours. So the insulin sensitivity is what's happening here. We are sensitizing our body to insulin, but also to nutrition. So we're becoming super efficient machines, efficiency and consistency. So if you're exercising every other day, you're going to start to maximize your insulin sensitivity. And this, in combination with plant-based nutrition, is where my body went,
so insulin sensitivity means that you need less insulin to process the same amount of glucose that you would have maybe before you started exercising.
Yeah, that's a good way of wording it. It's using your insulin wisely. So it means that, so in the case of, like for me, for example, if I need to take 1 unit of insulin per 15 grams of carbohydrates, as I became more sensitive, all of a sudden I needed 1 unit for 25 grams of carbohydrates. Wow. So I ended up dropping my insulin needs by about half within the first 6 months or so of easing into plant-based nutrition. I had no idea what was happening to me. And that's why we see studies, particularly in type 2 and in pre-diabetes, for what I say reversing the resistance. So insulin resistance means we're not using that insulin wisely. Now, for people that make insulin, it means that they're having to make more and make more and make more. So you can imagine it might take, just a ton of insulin to work for every gram of carbohydrates. That's another area where it's like, we'll just cut all the carbs out. Yeah, just cut all the carbs and that'll make diabetes easier. Actually, that's what we've been saying for like 100 years since insulin was discovered in 1922. And look at where that's gotten us.
Well, can we go into that a little deeper? Because I know I've heard so much about that, which is I shouldn't eat any carbs because that'll keep my blood sugar low. And they consider that a win. You're saying that no, and we've had Cyrus and Robbie on our show from Mastering Diabetes, and we've had Drew Harrisberg, episode 172, also talking about this, is that the win is when you can eat more carbs and have fewer insulin needs. Is that right? And when
Yeah, this is
keto, your body doesn't know how to deal with carbs at all. So if you eat a carb, woo, you need a ton of insulin.
keto. If you really want to light my fire, we'll go there. But
Yeah, let's go there because
oh
being
no.
fiery is your specialty,
Oh
Lauren.
gosh. Well, my specialty really is how to make friends with all kinds of eaters. With all kinds of eaters. Where do we begin? How do I introduce plant-based nutrition? So I always begin with fiber. So I don't start with the word like carbohydrate, but what I will do is say, what do you know about carbohydrates? Oh, they're bad. That's often a response you'll get. Say, define this. Say, well, I cut out all the potatoes and the pasta. And I said, well, are you telling me that you don't eat any vegetables? Because vegetables are carbohydrates.
Right.
So is fruit. So maybe what we need to do here is distinguish our carbohydrates, because cookies, cakes, and pie and candy, that is not beans, that is not rice, that is not broccoli, that is not an apple. So our carbohydrates need to separate right now. We've got the complex guys, best friend, full of fiber. Fiber is your new favorite F word. Say it back. That's kind of where I go with people. And I say this in front of audiences everywhere I speak. What is your new favorite F word? Let's say this to every patient. And it doesn't just have to be people with diabetes. It's everyone in America in particular needs to hear that fiber is your favorite F word, and tell me now what carbohydrates are and tell me those are bad, because that's what you're going to thrive on. So everyone knows cookies, cakes, candies, and chips. Why are we going to eat that stuff? But the thing is, if you look at a label of Doritos or a donut, they're half fat and not the kind of fat we want moving throughout our body. So people with diabetes are taught from the very beginning to have this perspective that one macronutrient is the problem, when really that macronutrient is the solution. Because if you start cutting out all those healthy fiber-rich carbohydrates, you start eating more protein and fat.
Yeah.
And particularly what? Well, yeah, my dietitian at the clinic told me that I can have all the protein I want, all the chicken and cheese that I want, and I can have free foods, which is a term that needs to retire in diabetes, because food is never free. Calories are a thing, and gaining way too much weight in diabetes is a very big deal. We're seeing the statistics in type 1 as well. Weight gain it's growing, and that's where people end up taking more insulin, becoming more resistant. Yeah, becoming more resistant on that fat. So we go, and I mean, this is a shock to people that have diabetes, an absolute shock, and it's fearful and it's scary. And I felt like I was so defiant. I'm breaking every single rule here. But you can't tell me that salad full of beans and greens, you can't tell me that's bad for me. So that's where my carbohydrate intake was going up. But what I didn't realize is that my fiber intake was through the roof. So I was having this much slower absorption rate. And the beautiful thing about that is that's where we see it's not just about blood sugar. I could feel like this lightning effect. My digestion was more efficient, which has a direct link to my emotional health and my mental health. That's where I started to think more clearly. The brain fog was lifting as my blood sugars were becoming more steady. So I wasn't super reactive, this up and down stuff with these slow, steady absorbing carbohydrates. I was able to time this with my insulin correctly. I had so much energy at that point, I didn't know what to do with it. And that's where I started exercising more. So I thought it was a study of one. Like, this, nobody's doing this. How is this happening to me? So you can imagine, like, I mean, it's such a shock to realize that carbohydrates, they're not bad.
Yeah.
They're actually good because they have fiber. Now, are fat and protein bad for your insulin because they don't have fiber, or is there some other thing about them that?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, they do not have fiber there. The protein itself isn't going to necessarily be an issue in insulin resistance, but if we eat way too much protein, we may actually see a rise in blood sugar. Fat in particular has this delayed effect. And I even see this with like peanut butter. I got to be careful with peanut butter, or just even, nut seeds, really high fat things, even though I love it, is that the carbohydrates are going to cause a need for insulin. They're going to cause a rise in blood sugar. And ideally what happens, and this happens to everyone, diabetes or not, blood sugar will always rise when we eat. Insulin hopefully comes in at the right timing, that you start turning the corner and you come back down into range. For every person, this is completely normal and natural. And I call it rolling in range. It's not a straight line, it's rolling in range. And that will help us to be a little more confident in seeing these changes happen. Fat has the ability to, I think of it as the sludge that gets in the way of the absorption of the glucose, and there's a hang time. this elevated blood sugar hang time that happens with fat, even if it's a healthy fat. And then you can see this trickling off after a while. And I've seen this happen to me overnight, which really ticks me off, because overnight when I'm unconscious is when I want blood sugar that's a straight line. I'm not eating here. This is when I want to really have tight control, because I'm asleep, and I will sleep better with healthy blood sugar, just like every person would. So that's the effect of even a healthy fat. Now, it doesn't have that saturated component to it. So if we're eating a whole bunch of cheese, meat and cheese and that saturated fat, that's what's causing the resistance. That's the stuff that's clogging up the muscle cell. I'm sure you've had other guests talk about this, so that our glucose is having a hard time doing its job. So if we clear that stuff out of the way, which fiber helps us do, we have now made a clear pathway for our body to be an efficient metabolic machine.
And that's why, as you said, overweight people, it exacerbates diabetes, because they have fat in their cells already, and it won't let the glucose in, or sorry, it won't let the insulin in, which will then allow the glucose in.
The interesting thing about weight is that insulin resistance can happen to anyone, no matter the size of their body. Just like we can meet people that have high body weight, but they don't have diabetes. Right. That's what's so interesting, is that weight is something where there's recently this conversation about that weight is a thing that we really need to be treating here in type 2 diabetes. And I see this really intense research come out, and I'm like, oh, you think? Okay, how many of these studies do we have? And
wait, what do you mean when you say that? I'm not clear. You think that they're right or they're not right?
Yeah, it's not wrong. Yes, it's right. But I think that what's actually happening there in this research that comes out, or these conferences that really focus on weight and type 2 diabetes, is what's the next drug we're going to talk about? That's what they're really looking to solve it with. While I'm sitting here going, hold on, we've got amazing research over here about what plant-based nutrition does for people with diabetes, type 1 or type 2. And I know, because I've had these conversations with people, and they're telling me they want to get off the medications, while you're trying to say that a medication is what is going to reverse or treat the diabetes. And the thing going on of people that have gained weight is it's never just about weight. There's so much below the surface of people that struggle with their weight. There is almost always trauma down there. When you start pulling out those threads of, tell me what your relationship with food is like, where did that start? And I've had people where when they were 8 years old, they have a memory of being locked in a room and being forced to eat vegetables. And they haven't eaten one since. Now they're 55 years old. So food is this dopamine release. It is going to be that thing that helps us bury the trauma within. So that's where those conversations really need to start. So when I talk to people that have diabetes, I'm digging, I'm really digging. Like, we're not just talking about blood sugar today. I want to know what your relationship is like with food. And we're going to go into that, because I need to pull that out of you and then light the fire as to why you want to live better.
Yeah. Let's talk about that dash of disobedience that you have that like runs throughout. It's like in your blood. You were telling me when we were emailing, when you sent the book, that you had just gotten back from a conference. Was it a nutrition conference, a medical conference?
That was maybe the American Diabetes Association.
Okay.
Yeah, I did that in June.
Okay, I think that's what it was. And you
epic.
said, "Oh, nobody that's ever let someone like me on stage."
Yeah,
You talk about plants and
it's
power
certainly
fiber.
how I feel. Yeah, is what's amazing about the American Diabetes Association is they have great research. They really kind of set the tone for a lot of things going on in diabetes, and they're like the biggest conference in the world. From my perspective, I felt like a patient there more than a professional. Real quick, the reason why this was so amazing is because they had a group of 4. So I spoke with 3 researchers on the benefits of plant-based nutrition for type 2. And I was number 4 as to come in and really talk about the practical application.
How the race for non-invasive continuous glucose monitoring has been going on for at least 15 years, if not longer. Have they cracked the code yet to non-invasive?
The third one that I know of is an under the skin implant. So and I don't know too much about, what
you would
else
know.
might be going on.
I mean, I think it's going to be, when that hits, it's going to be something big where people don't have to staple something in their body anymore.
Well, and it's not like it's a really simple filament under the skin it's really easy to wear, and adhesives are really good now. They used to fall off a lot easier. And they do need to be replaced because, to me, it's kind of like between Dexcom and between Abbott is that these guys have been in the game for a while. They're going to have great technology. They know what they're doing. They have had people wearing them for a while. And what's so important is the accuracy. You don't want to wear this by a company that hasn't tried this, that isn't FDA approved, or at least I should say you don't want to wear it's question that, because I can tell you when you have a faulty sensor, it is a tough day. It is a tough day, especially when you're trying to study yourself and all of a sudden you're getting numbers that are 60 points off, or it's not catching you on time. It's a little bit behind the minute. That's not fun either. Yeah, that's the FDA approved. Those are the guys that you want to go for, just so that you feel safe and accurate.
Yeah.
So in the book, you talk a lot. One of the things that's great about your book is you do offer a lot of very specific prescriptions, suggestions of how people can handle their blood sugar after they drink, blood sugar after a bad night's sleep, exercise, all sorts of things. I found it really interesting that you also give a prescription on how to get the most out of your doctor's appointments, because one of the things you experienced was very frustrating doctor's appointments from the time that you were diagnosed until 17 years later, maybe even still, but maybe not, because you've learned how to handle them. And could you go through those points? Because I think they could help all of us who go into the doctor.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Go in and go, hi, I'm here. And then the doctor goes, okay, great. I got 5 minutes. And then you don't get what you need from them.
Yeah. Talk about disobedience and feisty. That's definitely an area for me is, if I want, anyone that's listening to this, don't take any crap from your doctor. They should be your friend. They should be your biggest fan. We need them to do that. There are great doctors out there. There are fantastic practitioners. They are strapped for time, but they are not experts in everything. There's a point at which somebody needs a specialist. Someone needs a dietitian, a specific type of dietitian. So know what you want, know what you need. And, the first one I always say is, don't be on time, be early, be the person that contributes to a productive day. You've got to get on somebody's bright side, walking into that clinic. Just be the person who says, hey, how are you? This kind of, I'm here with intention kind of a thing. Be the person that has a bullet list. I have questions for you, doc. Here's what I need to understand about my body. Don't get worked over in the clinic. Be the one that asks for what you need. This is your health. Work for it. Work for it, want to live your life in a certain way. So that's really where it is coming in and saying, here's what I need today. And if you're not the person that can do this for me, who can? I need to talk about my nutrition. I need to talk about my mental health. I need to talk about my finances with medications. I'm having trouble with X, Y, and Z. These are the things you go directly to them versus waiting them to say something or point out something wrong. Is be the leader in that clinic, be the commander of your health.
You talk about this in the book, but we're giving a little cheat sheet to the book, it seems like. So you're like, before you discover plant-based nutrition, you're still you. So you're pushing, you're shoving, you're learning, you're growing, you're trying to get to the other side. This can't be all there is. And tell our listeners kind of that, when the aha moment happened. What did you have to eat? Or how did you, serpentine your way there? And was it immediate where the fiber aha came, or was that some later said, oh, this is why this potato, this grain, this salad is working?
There was a fork in the road. It was, Lauren, you're either going to get healthy or you're not. It wasn't like an in-between for me. You make this work or stuff's going to get real bad. I was unhappy. I was in this horrible place, seriously, just terrible relationship with my body. And I could see it on the outside, how I felt on the inside. It was just showing. It was in my relationships. It was everything. And I thought, this isn't me. This can't be me. This can't be it. I need to take diabetes and turn it into something. What is that thing? Or I need to use this to be a better person. Can that happen? And so I realized that nutrition is the beating heart of diabetes. So let's just lean into those plants a little bit, lean into the things that everybody knows are probably healthy. Just go into this. And I pretty much decided to stop eating meat overnight. I just kind of had a bit of a conscious awareness of, I like my animals better alive. That's it.
And you weren't freaked out about so many carbs? Like if you're just going to solely lean into plants, that's, what they are.
Because what I had done is I realized like, I'm hurting myself with food here. I am eating things that I am craving because my blood sugars are drastically fluctuating. I'm craving sugar in weird ways. That's how it was when I was little. So when my blood sugars were always high, because my cells were not using that glucose that was trapped in my bloodstream, is why I was actually craving sugar. It's like the cells are saying, no, we need the sugar, while the blood sugar is the thing that is holding on to it. So my hormones were saying, eat more, and I'm craving the sugar because I'm not getting any. So I wanted that fast acting nutrition. That was kind of happening to me again. And part of it was because I wanted to be rebellious, but I wasn't going to stop taking my insulin. I just had that idea of I can eat anything I want as long as I take insulin, which is a horrible saying that's out there in the world of diabetes. Not true. You are a person first. Diabetes is a partnership. You need to eat like you love yourself. So I needed to eat like I love myself. That was also part of that realization. So as soon as I started to notice that I felt better, like I feel better probably because I'm not eating the meat. My digestion just seems more comfortable. My meals itself were lighter, less greasy. Some of the obvious things I knew were right. I stopped being afraid of food. So I think, afraid of fruit. And I think that was where the carbohydrates started to increase also, is I'm not going to be afraid of fruit because fruit is healthy. No one's going to tell me it's not. That's also a phrase out there in the world of type 2 in particular. Fruit is bad. No. And that's coming from the primary care doctor world, by the way. So that is a thing that needs to change. And that's where I just decided, okay, well, if that's disobedient, then I guess I am the queen of rebellion. Because
it wasn't going to spike because it had fiber?
No, I didn't. I just knew I needed to count these carbohydrates, to take my insulin and do everything as usual. But I started to add beans just a little bit more. So I stopped being afraid of them, where before maybe I kept the beans out of a salad, or I didn't eat high fiber tortillas, and I do now. And I wrap a salad in that high fiber tortilla. I eat potatoes now, but I also will put beans and green onion and hummus and broccoli on the side. So I had a lot more color happening. And I thought, this is healthy. It can't be wrong. So I still took the amount of insulin I needed. Yeah. And I still took the amount of insulin I needed, but yet I was starting to go low because my sensitivity was going up. So all of these things happened at the same time with me deciding to go back to school. There was this little conference at the school. Someone sits down next to me. She introduces herself as a diabetes educator. I'm like, oh, great. Here comes the lecture, because I got a food with like falafel on it and a huge salad, all of this food. If she points at that and gives me the carb thing, I'm out of here. And I told her, you know what? I have type 1 and my blood sugars are better now than they've ever been before. And I eat more carbohydrates than I ever have in my life. Yeah. So there, kind of a thing. And she goes, oh, well, I know why. It's the fiber. And she points out my plate, and she ended up being my mentor. She's one of my dearest friends to this day. We live a mile apart. She then basically gave me a stack of nutrition information, research, and kept using the word, you are an evidence-based practitioner now. You are evidence-based. And I'm like, wait a minute, isn't everybody evidence-based? So here's what's interesting. There is science going, this is part of my history presentation, is we have evidence showing us that fiber benefits people who take insulin going back into the 70s. This information has been around for a while. Why aren't we talking about it? Why aren't we introducing plant-based nutrition as aggressively as we are telling people to low carb themselves into a worse complication? Into, in type 1 diabetes, it's, oh, your blood sugars are running high, take more insulin. We're going to look at your food. What's going on? Let's look at your movement. Let's treat you like a human being, not like a diabetic, because that's a bad word too. We don't label people with this.
What is the why? I mean, we all kind of guess. The drug companies want the money and they're in charge, or what? I mean, why don't we know this from the 70s, 50 years?
Change is hard. To just walk into clinics all over the place and say, there's just like on any kind of a search here, you don't have to go very far to see somebody preaching low carb, because there are different elements for people. And to say that you cut the carbs and leave it at that, there is more to the story. If we look at a low carb study paper, okay, what we're always seeing is there's so much control in that study. So much control. So if you take a group of people,
you mean it takes a lot of control for them to keep on eating low carb?
Right. Yeah.
Basically,
It's the long-term
willpower?
effect. Yeah. So if we see that the results are, all these studies end and more research is needed, by the way. But if you've got 20 people and you control everything that's going into their mouths, what do you think is going to happen? Particularly if you drop them from 1,800 calories a day down to 1,400 calories a day. And then they're continuing to be on that same medication, particularly in type 2 diabetes study, you're going to see that there will be a change. They're taking in less calories, less food to deal with. So they're probably going to see a change here. Now, release them into the wild, see how well they maintain. And it's
Well, they're not eating
working
also cookies, and they're not eating the bad carbs also.
Right. And they're being controlled very, very tightly. So I see this in people that dive into weight loss programs. These things have been around for decades. And we are in a position now with this trajectory. So I have a graph in my presentations that shows a trajectory between animal ag, so beef, chicken, pork, and dairy, and the pharmaceutical industry and the fast food industry. They are all moving at the same trajectory going north post World War II. They're all working like so interesting. In 1922 was when insulin was beginning to be injected here. In 1921, 22. That was also when White Castle came around. The first White Castle also came up in that year. So I think we've been 100 years now of insulin and fast food. Pharmaceuticals are through the roof, and animal agriculture, their money intake has gone straight north, while the cost of those foods went down because they figured out how to grow them big and slaughter them young. That's their process. So I see a lot of things here where look at where our nutrition has come into play. Look at the relationship with the pharmaceutical industry, fast food industry, how that people have been played with, how they're being experimented on in some ways, when we have the evidence that we could eat these foods that grow from the earth and have really fantastic outcomes no matter who we are, if we individualize it and figure out what that person needs to treat the condition that they have. But many of us have more than one. 60% of Americans have more than one chronic condition. I'm lucky right now, I'm holding on to one. Hopefully it stays that way. I'm 29 years with type 1 diabetes at this point. So I'm getting healthier as I age because of this healthy food intake, period. Healthy food. And I'm off the graph. I'm not contributing to any of that when I think of it. Pharmaceutical industry, fast food industry, and this trajectory growth here that isn't showing that we're headed in the right direction. So let's go in the other direction.
What is one of the, we've sort of have an idea of what causes type 2 diabetes. What are some of the thoughts that you have about what causes type 1 diabetes, the pancreas to no longer produce insulin at all of a sudden at sort of different ages?
Yeah, and the average age has increased around the world. In the last 5 years or so, there's been about a 15% jump in the diagnosis of type 1. That's significant for chronic disease. And I think of it as, an autoimmune condition. It means that something that should be automatic isn't working that way. Why is my body attacking myself? What's going on here? This miscommunication that's kind of happening. So, it's happening around the world. So whether it's the pharmaceuticals we might be taking too many of when we're little kids, or it could be in the air, in the water, what could be contributing to this is going to be one of the great questions of all time. But I also think, why do we have to question it? Look at what's going on in our world. Look at the pollution. Look at what we're throwing away. Look at what we're breathing in. I mean, even if you live in a rural area in Sweden, they have some of the highest rates of type 1 diabetes in Scandinavia. So it just doesn't make sense, but such as type 1 is, let's try to make sense of this difficult situation and then take it and run with it and use our weakness and turn it into our strength kind of a deal, because we're never going to have the answers for all of the things that just start to not work the way that we think they're supposed to, but maybe they'll turn out into something even better. I guess that's kind of how I've tried to turn the dial on my situation that's not going anywhere.
Yeah. you mentioned Scandinavia, they also have the highest rates of osteoporosis. And in the very beginning of the episode, you were talking about dairy and someone that you knew I can't remember if you said she was pre-diabetic or diabetic, but that just with a couple days of taking the dairy out, she feels so much better. Why is that?
Well, the simple answer, I think, for anyone that diabetes or not, is that inflammatory reaction. It's looking at this high percentage of people that dairy doesn't actually benefit. It's a thing that we're conditioned to take in as if we have to have the type of nutrition that we're getting. You got to have the protein and the calcium. Oh, you're not going to get any calcium unless you drink milk. It's that twist of a conversation. Yeah, vitamin D, it's this twisting of a conversation here that you have to have these things. Little kids in schools, they're getting milk with cheese on top of cheese on top of cheese for lunch. I remember that when I was a kid going through it. So you start thinking, I have to eat these things, but aren't they healthy? Look at Canada. Dairy is not considered a health food in Canada. What are we doing here in the States? So I think what I find is when people are quite confused about something going on in their body, I often have people approach me and say, I've done this, I've tried this, and still I feel this way. And I start asking them, about inflammatory foods. So I kind of go through some things like, how much meat are you eating? How much cheese are you eating? Are you doing alcohol, sugar, some of the obvious things, oils? And I try to cut out the oil. I've gone through the gluten thing. I've tried fasting. I hear all of these things, but they never take out the dairy. So I just try to bring them into this position where they start to discover on their own that the one thing they haven't tried is probably why you're not where you want to be. And I'm about to tell you to eat more of fiber-rich foods, but I'm going to tell you to eat less of the stuff that's inflammatory. And we're just going to investigate this and see what's going on. Let's just investigate. And what's fun is that I can kind of sit back, let them do their thing and say, let's just give this 4, 5, 6 weeks. And I'm not telling you that you are going to have a miracle, but I want you to self-study. And that's the beautiful thing about people doing this is they realize, well, these foods are inflammatory. They're not considered health foods. We're going to fulfill your calcium needs by increasing more of these foods, even though we're decreasing everything from a cow, and we're going to see how you feel. I know this happened for me. I know this actually happened for my husband in his performance because he was still eating cheese. He cut cheese out and he was like, I'm faster. I was like, okay, of course you are. And so it's an interesting experiment. It's case by case. What's it going to take for you to feel better in your body? And what I love is when I get an email from someone that says, all I did was eat a little less meat, or I'm no longer drinking milk, or something where they found their comfort level in backing off on animal products while increasing the fiber. Because I always tell them, we've got to increase what's missing. This is what's missing. Eat more of what's missing. We're going to enrich your body. We're going to make you a really efficient machine. We're going to pull out the stuff that is not helping. And then tell me what's going on. And that was where she said, it's just been a couple of days and I'm convinced. Blood sugars were going down.
And the research that I've seen, there's not very much at all, as you know, on the inflammatory effects of dairy. They think it is probably the sugar molecules, D-galactose and NEU5GC, because our body just doesn't recognize them because we don't have those exact sugar molecules to human beings. And it does make sense that something foreign coming into the body that our body can't recognize, then our body creates a inflammatory response.
In so many situations, we're either sensitive to the protein or we're sensitive to the sugar, whatever the property of that food is, right? But look at how often this steers us back to what we're putting in our mouths. The information that we're taking in, nutrients that we're taking in, or it's stress that we're taking in externally. There's just so much more to that story with someone that has type 2 diabetes than just cut all the carbs, see how well that works. That is the last thing anymore in this progressive world that somebody with diabetes needs to hear. They need to hear, let's get nutrient rich. Let's do this. We're not going to starve you and try to find some restrictive plan that you can stick to for the rest of your lives, because how much does any of us like restriction?
No. Yeah. And would that be your advice to somebody that's listening that has pre-diabetes? Let's get nutrient rich and let's up the fiber. I mean, if someone's listening that's like, oh, I've been diagnosed with pre-diabetes and I'm hearing what she's saying. What's your advice?
The first thing I like to ask people is, what do you want? Does anybody ever ask you that? Do you know what you want? yeah, heck yeah, I want to run a marathon. I'm like, all right, let's do this. Operation John runs a marathon. So many people don't get a chance to even think about that. We go straight to, well, this looks like type 2 diabetes. So now you know what you got to do. And that's the tone immediately.
It's like the end.
That room. Right,
So
exactly.
depressing.
Oh, this is so sad. Words like suffering, afflicted, non-compliant, awful word. Things that like this come out, disabled. Diabetes runs so deep. It gets into the core. It is a mind, body, spirit thing. And even if you've seen someone in your family not do well, that can get into somebody's head too. Oh, great, grandma had it, lost a leg.
Yeah, right.
So what do you want? I'm serious. What do you want? Well, I want to get off my medications. Is that even a thing? Yeah, it's a thing. You'd be amazed at how many people don't think they could ever get off medications, which also isn't a promise, but it's have this in mind, because we are going to get into nutrition, help you become again, the efficient machine. That's what we're going to learn about food. And then you're going to have that conversation with your doctor, because you're going to put up an A1C that is lower after we fill in the gaps with your nutrition. But we're also going to decrease the things that are not helping you get healthier. So we create a roadmap. What do you want? Okay, Operation Get Fit. I had someone say, I'm tired of being fat grandma. I said, well, then this is going to be Operation Fit Grandma. And trying to make this fun, something to look forward to. That's why I say making friends with every kind of eater is so important for a plant-based dietitian, plant-based practitioner in general, is how are you pitching this? But I have to teach someone how to believe in themselves. We really have to teach people to do that. Not everyone is self-driven, but you also have to help them paint a picture that it's possible, that goals are supposed to become real. They're not some star in the sky where you just aren't going to touch that thing no matter what. You have to see yourself that way. And sometimes I have to ask a serious question. If you woke up tomorrow in your ideal state of health, how would that Leslie eat? How would that Bob eat? Well, it probably wouldn't be going through the drive-in anymore. Okay. How do we not go through the drive-in anymore? Well, let's have a conversation about grocery shopping. How do you cook? What do you do at home? So I get into their shoes. I really get into their life of what I would do in that situation. And we go back to the basics. So what do you want? Here's where we're going to talk about nutrition. Here's the strategy. You're going to eat more of this, and you're going to start eating a little bit less of these things. Here's why. But I lean into the eat more of first, because what I notice is if people are starting to eat more plants, they're starting to understand that protein is everywhere. It is everywhere. You are not going to be deficient in protein. Let's get over that right now. We're going to add more nutrients into your body. And inevitably, what I see them doing is eating less meat. They're eating smaller portion sizes of those foods because they start to decide on their own, I don't feel as good when I eat these things. Or I'm going to eat all these vegetables first. I'm going to start adding beans. I never ate oatmeal in the morning with berries before. Wow, this is different. So we're going to start eating more. Let's look at your schedule. When is it most realistic? So we really just get into, I care about you. I need you to care about you. And I need you to eat like you love yourself. Here's a grocery list and I'll call you in 4 weeks. It's kind of, we just go into, let's learn how to eat. Let's learn how to, eat, not how to diet. We're learning how to fuel our body, period. And then you're going to start putting up some killer blood sugar values. And
very
so
different from what you were, how you were treated as a
totally
patient. So
yeah,
it's great that you're able to take all that you learned from that pain and make lemonade, but not lemonade that raises your blood sugar. Tell us where we can find your book and how people can follow you.
Yeah, my name, laurenplunkett.com, is where you can just head to my website, check things out. LinkedIn, I'm kind of doing stuff on there too, of course. And then the ebook is available also, but I am signing all the hardcovers and sending them with love directly from my hands.
And you work with anyone, like it doesn't have to be someone with type 1 or type 2 or pre-diabetes. I mean, yeah.
So I've taken a little bit of a break. I'm doing some more writing right now. But hey, emails are free. I love to hear from people. So if anyone does want to work with me specifically, and like I said, I approach this with, what do you want? Let's do this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not messing around. You are going to be happier after working with me, or else I'm not going to be able to sleep at night. I will give you everything I got. It's just in there, right? Like I am still that little girl on the exam table crying everywhere I go. So when someone shares a story with me that their doctor treated them just disrespectfully, or like there was no hope, I just, I'm ready to go to bat.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, folks. Okay. Back by very popular demand is our plant-powered plate fridge magnet, which you are going to receive for free if you leave us a rating and a review on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on. So here are the details. Just write your quick review. Does not need to be long, does not need to be a whole story. Just be honest and speak from the heart. Then take a quick screenshot of the review you wrote and email it to us at podcast@switch4good.org. That's podcast@switch4good.org. And include your mailing address so we can send you a power plate. We are doing this because the more reviews we garner, the higher we go in search results, which means more folks will learn about our podcast. So the power is in your hands. Leave us a review and zoom, your power plate arrives at your doorstep.
So thank you so much for tuning in today. If we helped you in any way, then click the subscribe button and let's keep hanging out together. We have so much more to share with you.
And if you need more information on actually making the switch for good, please visit us at switch4good.org for loads of info. And you can subscribe to our mailing list where you will receive all sorts of super cool gifts, discount codes to our very fave dairy-free products, and a lifetime of powerful health tips.
So join us on the journey to Switch for Good. This is the future.